Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Writers Chat. We are so glad to have you with us, whether you're here live as we're recording or if you're watching the replay. My name is Johnny Alexander. I am here with Norma Poor, Melissa Strout, and Brandy Bro. And I am going to turn things over to Norma so she can introduce our very, very special guest.
Well, hello. Excuse me. And of course, I get a frog in my throat. We are so excited to have Louisa Tro back with us. I'm sorry, Louisa, I think I messed it up. All the way from France. We are so excited to have you. She was born in France and she speaks 5 languages. And Louisa follows the family tradition of transmitting stories. She writes in French and should soon be published in English. Yay! An angelic fantasy novel, an edgy fantasy soft crime fiction, and a steampunk dystopian novel for teens, and short stories for kids are all part of her creations. Louisa today is going to talk about her story, her writing journey of how a preschool teacher and former missionary to Haiti got the skill of writing, gripping stories woven within, how events and encounters bring insight to the call to be an inspired author. So Louisa, take it away. We'd love to hear your journey. How did you begin your writing journey?
First of all, thank you for welcoming me among you. I remember with emotion the first day I arrived on Serious Writers Chat during lockdown 2020 and how Johnny was all over the moon. Come on, we're international. We've got a French visitor. And 3 years later, then the visitor turns to be a guest. So I'm grateful and I thank you for your trust that you're gonna enjoy what I have to share. What you said about family tradition is really, I would say, one of the roots core. My grandparents had a bookshop, and I remember from infancy my grandmother selling books, and both parents of my grandmothers had also a bookshop, but were also printers. One was printing a local newspaper, the other one was printing geographic and historical books from their county. And so I've known that in our family, we had been printing books. And my granddad always told me one of our cousins wrote a big book and one day you're going to read it. And he could never find a publisher, but it was really a good book. So I was given books as a child by my grandmother. One of the books that impacted me very much was from Mary Webb. She's an English author from Shropshire, and she's writing quite similar to the Bronte sisters. So I was given those books, the Bronte sisters, Mary Webb. Maybe you remember Gone to Earth. There's an Hollywood movie from David O. Selznick in the 50s with that story. And stories were always gripping my heart, and I was really immersed in the fiction and always thinking I'd love to do that. And the only thing I was writing when I was young were letters. We had, I was born in the 60s, so in the 70s when I was a teen and early 80s, we had no phone call were very expensive. So you would write letters to your friends all over France. And I couldn't write a short letter. I always had to go to the post and have the weight because I needed the extra stamp. And people were always telling me, your letter, like it changed my life. It was so inspiring, so encouraging. It was like pastoral care before knowing the Lord, sort of. So that was sort of my DNA. Now, how my first book came, I got saved when I was doing an MSc in agricultural marketing in the UK. I arrived in the UK 1st of October 86. I heard the gospel on the 3rd of October, and on the 5th, I went to a Baptist church and was really visited by God. I knew I had to surrender my life to Jesus. And when I came back to France 1 year later, I just wanted to be a missionary. I went to Africa. In Africa, I was told about a Bible school in Denmark. So I went for 18 months in Denmark. And that was when the wall collapsed, you know, the Berlin Wall is, well, European. It was something really like, I don't know, like a tsunami wave hitting us. And when I was in Denmark, some people from the Danish church thought we have to go to the Eastern countries, especially to visit the orphanages in Romania. And when they went, it gave these pictures, which I still have from 80. They just had children with, you know, the skin completely ruined, the hair completely ruined, 300 kids, 7 adult workers, poor bedding, no food. They just kept crying, hugging kids, crying, hugging kids. And the children ministry worker in the Bible college thought, I want to give plush toys to these kids, because if they have no one to cuddle them, at least they can cuddle a plush toy and feel love and maybe be healed in their heart. So she started to go to all the churches in Denmark and say, give us plush toys to send over there. Oh, you're hearing the horses, because I'm in a ranch in France, by the way. Or the donkeys. There are donkeys as well. And I was puzzled, like, these children, of course, they would need love, cuddles, but most of all, they need Jesus. They need to know that Jesus came to earth and died for them to give them eternal life. And I had that in my mind. And I went to sleep like every day at 10 o'clock. And I awoke like half an hour afterwards with a dream. And in that dream, it was a preacher from India. And that preacher that I had heard, a real living man, not a fantasy dream character, was preaching his favorite topic about the spirit of adoption from Romans 8, and about when God, when a human, when a family adopts a child, they could go to an orphanage and say, amongst 20 children, we pick up one. That's the one we've chosen. And he always had that story of a kid who was despaired that he had been adopted, but the parents would say, you were chosen amongst 20 or amongst 50, while the other families, well, they had no choice. They took the children that were given to them by natural birth. And I dreamed that preacher, and I have a story. And the story is of a little girl. So it became my first book, Joanna, in 90. Well, we printed it in 91, but the dream was in 1990, of that girl who really is despaired in the orphanage, and the kid who has to give out his plush toy, the Danish kid. So it was given also to the Danish kids, but it's in Romanian. And she has the opportunity to choose the teddy bear amongst many, which was the one she was praying about. But I can say I have no credit. I received the dream from God. And I wrote the story, and I told the lady, don't you want to print a book to bring the gospel to the kids? And so then she says she's grateful for the bear, but she's most of all grateful because those who came to give the bear came to speak about Jesus and how he died on the cross to give salvation, so that in the end, she has no more teddy bear. She just have gratefulness for God. So I can say I've been a printed international writer, printed by a Danish Bible school for Romanian children from 1991. So it's a pretty long time. But then there's an emptiness, like the abyssal void of no writing, but still writing is in my heart. I then become a preschool teacher, so I I tell stories all day long, and I discovered I'm a pretty good storyteller. I can really bring the emotions, I can really catch up like 30 kids or 60 kids with the story that I bring to them. And at that time also you have all the movies from you know, the how do I get the name? These fantasy from it's not C.S. Lewis, it's the other one, Tolkien. You know, Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings, and we're watching these movies, and I'm thinking, well, this is what I want to write, allegoric. And then C.S. Lewis comes with the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and have it. And then in 2004, I receive a character about whom I have still not written the book. It has been 17 years in my heart, but that red-head giant, a red hands giant, who is within a river trying to catch boats and save people from going to the pits, while the crowd say, beware, the giant, he's going to kill you, he's nasty, because they do not believe that there's a pit behind with the drowning. So I know that will be the sort of the final cut of my dystopian series of book. So I was having these characters, but I was also mother of 3 kids, married, preschool teacher full-time. So I just kept the stories coming. And in 2007, my heart was for homeless people, thinking if we could just write sort of fairy tales, a bit like Hans Christian Andersen, if you remember the little girl with the matches. He was bringing the gospel through fairy tales, and I was thinking we could reach out with such fairy tales for homeless people. And I had that on my heart in 2007, and it was brought to pass in 2016 that I could have a conference with homeless people and making theater out of my fairy tales for them. So sometimes, maybe for those who listen, projects take time. Those projects, they need to mature, they probably need to die. If the grain doesn't die, it cannot be raised back to life. And I've learned like the death road, or the death to self path, because everyone was saying, wow, there's already everything that is needed in the Christian market, so many good books which I would buy for my children and read. And so I was doing nothing. Then I came across an American lady called Deanna Dorman in Texas, in McAllen, Texas. But she was doing all the time outreaches in Reynosa, Mexico. And she was writing so many Christian stories in English and Spanish. And as I was looking for Sunday school, I thought, what you write is brilliant. Plenty of outreach stories for children. So I wrote to her and I say, can I translate your stories into French? So I have here, it gave many books, but I have here one of these books. This one is the one about Ruth from Deanna Dorman. I'm so grateful. I've been translating, I don't know, like 15, 20 stories from her. Not all were in books, but this one was books for, Sunday schools. But it gave me the discipline in the faithfulness of I translate and I want the best French, to learn the editing process, to learn how to write, and to also decipher that I had a flaw in writing, that sometimes even it's, you would say, what a shame, it's prideful. Sometimes I was thinking, in the way I translate, I even tell the story better than she does, even though she was giving the story. I mean, she's so talented, Deanna Dorman. But you see what I mean? It's not to boast selfishly, but it's just to recognize through just serving in an obscure way. During the summer, my children would go to the beach, and I would stay at home in July and August and translate, because I was out of work. And just for the sake of having the French people and the French-speaking African people get free, because she would send free stories free of charge to all pastor or missionary who would require it. She got funds from the Macallan Christian community. And I was thinking, well, it could be meaningless, but I knew really I'm a writer. So in 2011, I was thinking, now let's get serious about it. Let's go. There are a lot of book fairs in France with conferences from authors. Let's go and sort of rub yourself, rub, your skin with the writers. So I would go take notes. I would say that's you prepare faithfully, long ahead, what you know is your calling. And everybody thinks you're a fool. Why are you leaving your children with their dad during those weekends to just go and listen to crime writers or horror story writers you would never buy because you're totally unable to read such stories? And I would talk to them. How did you start? And then one year after another, I keep meeting the same people, and they say, "Oh, I remember you." And then there's that verse in Proverbs. I wouldn't give the number of the verse, but that's your help is in many advisors. I would take advice everywhere. And one guy said, I've been writing novels for a long time, and I would try publishers. It never went through. And one day I found a short story competition. I wrote a short story. I won the prize. Then I went to the publisher saying, I've won a prize. Would you consider my novel? And then I got published with a tiny publisher, and then a bigger, and then a bigger. And now he's one of the majors in crime story in France. And that guy say, try short story literacy competition. And being quite disciplined, in 2014, I did 15 of such competitions, plus one in English, because also in 2013, well, I would say from 2012 onwards, I was reading all the Jane Austens and all the Bronte sisters book. So I took all of them because I really, they are like, my literacy masters. And I was thinking, how obscure, how unknown, how lost in the country with no connections. And in the 19th century, women were not recognized, but a few who got published, how they never gave up. And that brought, as if I was given an impartation of faith, like, if it was possible for them in the 19th century, why? No, like a spirit-filled believer having a message, wishing to release a sound. That was the title of this talk today. Writing books, but to release a sound, the sound that there's only one story, and that this one story is the one that is in here. Well, I read the one in your Bible, but yeah, just get in the Bible. There's just one message. It's the message of redemption. It's the message of getting to know Jesus and get saved from eternal damnation, eternal condemnation, because he became a sinless offering, beaten and bruised and killed for our sins, and his blood was shed, and we can be cleansed. And if our sins are like crimson, we can be made white as snow, as it says in Isaiah 1. And this one message, then, because of the creative mindset that God can infuse to so many writers, I mean, there's room for everyone. And that's why I encourage you, if you're asking, you who are watching this video, if you are asking, should I write? I would say the answer is, you're not here by chance. You're not listening to me just by how come. God is telling you, of course, because you carry this unique message that none of us, you would take all the Christians of the earth would be able to carry, because it's from your own treasures. That's something that Jesus said, that someone digs the old and the new from its own treasure, but from all the bruise of our life, which I would call the old, and from the renewed, from the spirit, which I would call the new, we get from the new and the old, and we twist it together, and then characters just pop up and it's obvious, and then plot and antagonists pop up, and it goes and it goes, and then it flows, and it's a book, or it's a short story, or a children book, or a memoir, or a devotional, whatever. But yeah, just let's go and write. So with all this encouragement from the Bronte sisters, I write those 15 short stories rather, plus one which was a competition from the Bronte Society in English. And then I start to receive, you won this one, you're second to this one, you're number 8 to this one, but you're still going to be published. You're one of the winners. It's a competition. We have 3 winners, but we chose 20 others to be published. And you're one of the 20, but then the head of the jury says, but you were the best. You were my favorite one. I'm so sad you were not in the 3. And I got 6 published amongst the 15. And then I go back to the book fair and I meet that crime guy and I say, oh, how can I say that to you? Your advice, do short story competition? Well, I followed it and I got 6 prizes, and I'm just like, wow. And so his answer was, now do not doubt. In French, there's a saying which is, you have a quill. You know, the quill that you dip in the ink to write. It's the French saying, meaning you know how to write with fluidity. You have a quill. Next challenge, the novel competition. And I was like, oh, how do I write a novel? I mean, it's like, no way. And then to another book fair, I meet a guy who say, oh yeah, I was the winner of one of these novel literacy competition. I earned 10,000 euros. And with it, I bought a publisher company. And I was like, wow. I buy his book and I think, this is so simple. His story is not like, it's just, I could do that. So now let's try. So I came up with a story in the 7 areas in France, south of France, the place where there were the Huguenots. And then, oh my God, what should I write? And it was obvious. You will write a book in the Frank Peretti, This Present Darkness and Piercing the Darkness style. And the reason why is that I accepted Jesus when I was 22 years old. But 2 years before, when I was 20 years old, I met a guy who had been to the army in Lebanon, who was quite destroyed emotionally. And he was a student in our school, so I felt no danger from a student in the school premises. And we spent an evening talking about war and different things, and then talking about Jesus and about forgiveness. And I don't know, this guy thought that because I had invited him to drink a herbal tea, probably I wanted to have an affair with him, which was not the case. I was just like, big heart. I want to help you, like, overcome your army breakdown and how it's difficult to come back to France. And then I found myself that I was under that guy. He wanted to go out with me, probably to rape me. He tried to strip off my clothes, but I had a very good quality one piece, the trousers with I don't know, it was a Japanese fabric my grandma had bought to me, unbreakable, unterrible. So the guy turned to be a bad man and started to kill me. So he put his hand over here and literally pushed everything. While he was in the military, he was quite strong, to push everything inside here. And with the other hand, he was blocking both nose and mouth. And I was trying to get my breath. and no, nothing would come in. So you're not dead yet. You still have your brain. I was thinking, my parents, I'm not going to die in my own bed, 20 years old, killed by a guy who just turned crazy because I don't want to be his girlfriend. And then I remember we were talking about Jesus. And I mean, it's nearly, you would say, like a word of knowledge. It came, well, first I was looking at his eyes, trying to lock eyes with him and just tell him, don't kill me. I need to, I was like not gasping because there was no way any air could get in, but leave me alone. And looking his eyes, I was thinking, how strange, the eyes of a cat. And then it's not a cat, it's a snake. And then, like a word of knowledge, it's the devil, like within the guy trying to kill you. And in fact, it's not you that is the target. The target is the word of God that you were speaking about Jesus enabling people to forgive because of who he is. Now, as someone raised a Catholic who did all the communion, I loved Jesus. Even when I was 15, I took a ring and I said, Jesus, I love you. I want to marry you. But I was not saved. I really noticed the difference when I accepted Jesus 2 years afterwards. But it was so obvious. So in my head, I just said, Jesus, because of you, I'm like this, meaning being killed. Get me out of here. Which is not very polite. Like, how dare you give orders to Jesus? And the guy went flying 1 meter above me. And you just can't believe your eyes. You just see the guy flying. And then put at the back of the bed, totally frozen and paralyzed. And so I could escape. I could even say to him, forgive me because I'm going to rush in the corridor, ask for help. Then he said, I'm going to kill you in front of witnesses. For 6 months, I went to school always with guardians because of being afraid. And I couldn't doubt the real presence of angels. And when I went to Bible college, and all the students were reading Frank Peretti, and I was like, yeah, you may call it fiction, but I know for sure angels are real. And as long as you're not saved, but you're the one, it's in Hebrew, angels are servants being to minister to those who are going to inherit salvation. I can testify this is absolutely true. Then I had to escape Dave several times, like falling from a cliff and feeling hands pushing me up the cliff. I was saved at that time. Or like driving in the fog and my steering wheel turned alone and my car went to the side. I don't know why. And then a huge truck in the fog went so quickly it would have destroyed my car and killed me. I have several things like this. So it was obvious. My first novel, I need to honor God with angelic fantasy. So I wrote it first in 2004 and finished it in 2016, edited and in 18, found a bad publisher, but still got it published in 2018. And it was not really for the Christians, but really for the non-Christians, about a sort of angelic fantasy that you would read twice. So I'll show you how it looks like. You would read, that's the first version. Then I did it a second time. Terra Seven, because you're in the 7 areas. You would read the first time without reading the tiny angelic chapters called prime chapters. And then you would read a second time with the angelic in it. And I thought I'm doing something new on the market. I call it a 2-in-1 novel. So you buy 1 book, but you get 2 novels. And it was more to get unbelievers to sort of decipher the angelic realm could be around them and decipher the favor of God. And one of the minor characters was a born-again Christian. So you had bits of the gospel smuggled into it. But that was the first novel. In the meanwhile, I went to another book fair in 2015, and I met one of the head of the juries who had given me, you know, those prizes, because my short stories were very edgy. Some were about like NDE, near-death experience, but of someone who was an unbelieving surgeon, having a very nasty life, and being brought into heaven in front of the throne of God. And God tells him, why did you reject taking me into your life? Like, you will be separated from me. And then the surgeon sees a bleeding lamb, and he says, well, God, you know, I'm a surgeon. I could fix the wounds for the bleeding lamb. And then like demons take him to, well, elsewhere than being with God. So this sort of edgy story that got a prize had divided the jury. There was a woman who stood up, was yelling, I said I would never acknowledge that such a story would be accepted. And then the head of the jury said, we said for the literacy quality, no matter our own belief, we want to give the prize for this one. And with my husband, we were like, come on, come on. Wow. And so I go back 2 years afterwards and I meet this lady, and I say, you know, I'm a preschool teacher. I'd love to write stories for children. And she said, well, I'm a publisher from a children's company. It's not books, it's magazine, the monthly magazine, every month, a new title, but there are short stories with a CD, an artist recording the CDs. Send me some text. And so she published me 3 times. She published me twice in 2016. So here I have one of these. So these are like really good quality books with the CD, the story. Then after the story, you have games, you have poetry, you have, and this is French-wide, Belgium, Canada, Switzerland. It goes like I go to my own library, local library, and I found it. I go to the airport and I see it, or the train station, I see it on display. So this one was a summer edition, so it was July and August. The other one was this one was June 18, but same with the CD. This one was reprinted a second time, and the third one I do not have it, but you can see here, that's the one. It was a rugby story based on a hen. And 2 of these were translated into Chinese, and I earned 200 euros every year out of what is sold in China, because it was turned into a reading method for Chinese children. So this gave me a sort of exposure, even though for this you get paid once $500, and then you get no more, you just get for the international, but you get your name to appear in all like the random and algorithm, and to be listed as a well-known children's author. And I thought, what a grace from God that the head of the jury, because she was a publisher, she was the head of the jury, but meeting her again and getting to be published by this lady, I was just amazed. So I haven't been writing for her for a long time. I should, because it brings like those 500 straight away. But from that, I could reach out to publishers and say, you know, I'm not someone unknown. There had been many readers for these stories. And this one is an allegory of redemption, which the publisher couldn't decipher. But the little boy had his own bicycle, whom he customized very personally, stolen and found back in the marketplace, and had to buy his own, and which is, there were similar stories with the story of the Lost Boat you might have read for Sunday school ministry. And so it was similar to that. With this book, I started to go to book fair. And I discovered that with the book fairs, when you go to rural south of France, you like doing outreach to people in places where you have no churches. There are very, very few evangelic churches because of the Huguenot persecution. And I was thinking I should give more to those people. Not everybody will buy my books, and I want to have them to have a token of the gospel. So I was praying, Lord, give me your strategy for that. And then God's strategy was go back to your beloved Brontes and Jane Austen. These are free of rights. You can republish these books. You can, I was really angry, sort of, not angry, but when I saw the movie Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, and how you would have Liz Bennet with, you know, knives and warring, if you've seen the movie, and yeah, because it's free of rights. You can take Liz Bennet and have her do everything, or the Bridget Jones series with Mr. Darcy, and they were so famous movies, and they were revisiting the content of Pride and Prejudice. And I was thinking, wow, this could make books, but I still hadn't done it. And then literacy competition again. How do you write a novel in 1 month, which you haven't started? And then it came back, well, I will use the 19th century free of right translation of some of my favorite books. So I took Agnes Grey from Anne Bronte, who was really the evangelical of the family. But my setting is in Hollywood with John Steinbeck twist, because I was such a lover of John Steinbeck, and I've been reading, I don't know, 4 or 5 of his books when I was a teen. And so I revisited Agnes Grey's book, but instead of being a governess in Britain, she just goes to the States and become a governess in the, you know, the families of the producers. So she's not on the stage, she's in the back, you know, raising the spoiled kids of the producers. It's really her story, her characters. I add nothing to the plot, but I just expand all the Christian inputs, because she was really born again, Anne Bronte, and she has her main character go to sort of evangelize people. So I did that not to win, but just to have it free on Kobo. And when I would go to book fairs, I would say to people, well, if you go to my Linktree, Louisa Treborach Linktree, both these novels, well, so I'll show you the second one. The second one is Persuasion. So it's now Miss Anne Elliot in Hollywood. I made the cover with Canva and images from Pixabay. And same, I really expanded from the Persuasion. I started it in Williamsburg with a sort of a law family, because Jane Austen should have married a law student, and she had to renounce her love, her sweetheart, because he was too poor. That's why she wrote Persuasion, like giving back a future she didn't have. And so I wanted to have a lawyer to be the hero, as if I was giving back her lawyer to Jane Austen. And this book, in the book fair, I say to people, if you don't buy my books, you can still download those 3 novels. They're full novels, and you can see how they are. These, you can download them for free. I know the gospel is just smuggled within. And then when people feel embarrassed, I say, but I give you a book, but when you download it, you give me going higher in the algorithm. So, I mean, that's fair enough. I'm so happy if you download it. I also wrote some short crime stories. Some got published by a non-Christian publisher in here. And because I love the character, when I had new short story competition, I thought, I'll use the same character, but this time I'll put angelic fantasy. And so I wrote those, and again, they were free to download. One had been downloaded 7,200 times. And it's really like a knock to atheism because of the angelic thing. This one had 800 times, and this one 380 times. So I don't know who are my readers. They are in Africa, Madagascar, in United States, Mexico, Spain, all Europe, Canada. I don't know who they are. Just pray for them to get the gospel. And then what I had on my heart still was how I would bring that red hand giant, and that C.S. Lewis, Narnia, or Tolkien, Lord of the Ring type of book. And so one of the prizes that I had in 2016 was in this book. So it was called Adventure and Destiny. And I had a very strange story. If I translate the title, would be The Incredible Destiny of the Adventurous Henry Little-P. And I sent this story to the publisher of these books, and I say, can we turn this story got a prize, but it's no more. Can we turn it in one of those magazines? And she says, no. Here you have a teenager's dystopian novel. Go and finish it. So once again, I find myself doing a literacy competition for teens novel. I do not win the prize, but I send it to so many publishers, and I find a publisher, very tiny publisher, and I say, I'm writing to you a short story for your literacy short story competition. I read on your website you do not take new novel because your line of publishing is full for 2 years. Nevertheless, because I send you this short story, because I want to tell you that each time when I go to book fairs, I take the novels and I give exposure to the publisher that would publish me, in case, keep it aside and you'll tell me. So he kindly answered, thank you very much, because you took the time to discover who we are. And it's very kind of you. Not all those who compete for our literacy competition look about who we are. And well, I really can't read it, but I still keep it. And then 8 months later, lockdown came with COVID. And so the man was locked inside with nothing else to do than reading the books. And then he said, when I started your Henry Little-P novel, I couldn't put it down. I read it in 3 days. And I want to publish it, but I believe such a book already has its own publisher. And I say, well, no, maybe you're the first one. I've read it. I've sent it to 50 publishers, but no one took it. So he said, well, but you have to wait nearly 2 years. I said, but I take it. And so it gave this one, which is very beautiful. And so it's the first, so it's for teens, but or people looking for dystopian. So this one is absolutely not religious. I mean, my publisher is not religious. It's only when we will come to the third part of the story that we will have sort of the allegoric twist. I will have two first. It's like two two stories in two different places, and at the end of each story the characters hear of the other ones. So you could start with this one, or you could start with the one soon to be written, but I'm just drawing the outline of it. And then the third one, the red hands giant, would be having all of them meeting him and getting the allegoric Aslan type plot. And so it's still not very famous. Last year it sold like 18 from the publisher, and I believe I've sold on the book fair, I've sold about 40 to 50, but I've given some to friends, so I'm not, so you wouldn't say that it's famous. I'm really famous with these, because with these my name has been going to everywhere in France. And even my sister-in-law, one day she met some kids and she said, oh, my sister-in-law is writing books. She wrote Le Vélo de Beneo, and then the African one, and they say, we have it, we keep listening to that CD in the car, we love it, it's one of our favorites. So okay. And I would say I'm not discouraged that I'm not earning a lot. I just earn enough to buy the new books for the next book fair. I republished Terra Seven with a new, better publisher under this title. So then I have two sets, one with small prints, one with big prints. I also did this one, which is like I took, and this is sort of fantasy crime, but I put, like, you know, the story of the surgeon. I put it in, I put it all my angel crime stories. I took my characters from this one, and it's just to widen the range so that when I'm in a book fair, I know I can smuggle the gospel with this one. If someone wants a crime novel, I can smuggle the gospel with this one. If someone wants a countryside rural story, or with this one if they want a sweet romance. It's all part of widening, making wider the way to reach out to people. And also sometimes I meet people, I bought your book and I read it and I loved it, 1 year after another when you go to the same book fair. So it's very encouraging, and I believe God doesn't judge, and I do not despise little beginnings. And so I'm so grateful for communities like the Serious Writers Chat communities. It also enabled me to do some conferences. During lockdown, there was one from the Kentucky Christian Writers Conference, which was year 2020, $20. I could afford that. And meeting, people like Chip McGregor and Bob Hostetler, like, who am I to just talk face to face, well, Zoom wide with those people. And then I did another conference with ACW Fellowship. This was really great. But then I thought, well, there might be also French Christian communities. So I started to join some forums and meetings, not weekly meetings like we have, but some like quarterly meetings. And one day they had short story competitions so that they publish free books also to spread the gospel. So one day I was published in 2021, I believe I was published with them. And then they asked me, do you want to be jury for the next book competition? Because you've been published already, even though, well, still this one is a national, international publisher. So we trust you. And I was there being jury with the head of the theological faculty in France, and another Christian French publisher, and another famous Christian author. So that was all the allegoric, it's called Contes de la Grâce, fairy tales about grace. And so I appear in it as the jury with those famous people. And I said, but can I put one of my fairy tales within? Because I want this to appear on Amazon. because these ones get such an exposure. If you open my Amazon page, they would say, Louisa Treborac's best book is this one, in which I have like maybe 10 or 12 pages. But then I get promoted by the fact that they have such a strength to run like French speaking worldwide, Quebec, Switzerland, Belgium, France, African speaking countries were some of those who wanted to go. So this one is free of charge if you download it either on Kobo or Amazon. And bit by bit, I believe that I'm still really at the beginning of my writing journey. And I've been speaking like nearly 15 minutes. But I'm grateful to God. He brings advice, he brings wisdom, he brings the right people around, like you, whom I've been meeting for more than 3 years, almost every Tuesday. Whenever I'm free, I just go home and get on Serious Writers Chats. And one person also I want to give thanks to is a Christian writer called Gail Gaiman Martin. Maybe you know that lady. And she wrote a book called Writing the Christian Romance, which is a book I bought like 7 years ago. And that's really my advice for all the newbies, beginners. If you want a really good book, how to get started as a Christian writer, I could download so many really inspiring advices. And yeah, there's a lot of work behind it that doesn't appear like this. A lot of solitary times on your computer. You can't move your hands, you can't move your back, you're aching everywhere, and you go to 2 a.m. in the morning and you awake at 5 so you can type again before going to work. But wow, that's it. So I see, is there any translation? Are there any translation? That's one of the things I have to do. The English translation. I really want to get out also in the English speaking world, at least with the ebooks, and then I self-print those, this one and this one. I really did everything myself on this one. And this one, it's a bit different. There's a publisher which is called Akala, which is the Association of Writers from the south of France. So they give you an ISBN number, they give you the right to bear their name if they've agreed your book, but then they are not a publisher. So you still, it's a bit like Mosaic maybe, which I really like the concept of Mosaic. Johnny, you explained it once. And I really hope that maybe one day we'll do such a thing with the French writing community as well. But this gives me also exposure in the south of France writing community. They loved my book, even though it had angels. They were free jury, and they all said, yes, we give you the Akala stamp. So that's it. Probably you could have a question with at the end.
What an amazing story. And I love, you've repeated it several times, how you've smuggled the gospel in. I love that. Because sometimes as Christian writers, we feel like we almost have to put it in their face, and we don't. Sometimes it's received better when it's smuggled in. I love that. I love that. What a powerful story. Thank you.
Yeah, I can say I draw this thing of smuggling from a friend from Colombia in our church who was teaching us flag worship and mime and drama to bring the gospel. And she said often when you talk to people and you share about Jesus, they have their brain like reasoning how I can counter what is said, how I can dismiss the truth of Jesus. But she says when you use art, then the people can't get the brain to function because they don't know what is going to be the next input of the drama, or the next input of the dance. And then they get hit like thunderstorm or lightning, bolts. You get hit by the gospel, and you cannot say, I haven't heard it. You cannot go back in time and I've never heard it. Now you're aware, and it's your decision. But there's a before and an after. And I believe that our artistic skills can produce the same, whether it's edgy Celtic fantasy, whether it's crime or contemporary romance, like The Mischief Thief, which was quite funny. But then they cannot say, and it's quoting Johnny Alexander, by the way, and the Celtic, it's Melissa, Emmett Stroh. But then they were hits, and they cannot go backward and say, we didn't know. And they'll have to give account. And that's the really singer sound. The sound will be played in their head when they read the books. But I love Jesus so much. He gave it all. And it's not so painful for me to write books. Maybe sometimes it's, you get up so early and you drive hours to go to that book fair. You nearly see nobody because it's a rural place. And then you get this person and you share the gospel, which was unexpected, and say, okay, even if it was for this one, this only one, but then nobody else would have reached that person in an unchurched spiritual desert country. So it was worthwhile. And I pray for my readers. God, find them no matter what. So thank you so much. And to those who are wondering, I say again, in case you haven't understood, keep writing for Jesus. He'll make a way. He'll make a way.
Yeah.
And he'll give the message.
I'm going to ask. Go ahead, Norma, real quick.
No, I was just going to say, I love the quill.
Me too.
That we've been given a quill. I love that.
I do. I think that should be our new motto. You have the quill.
Yeah, you have a quill, and a specific one. That's really the way it's worded out.
I love that. I'm going to ask everyone to come on. We have just for a few more minutes. And while you're doing that, if you want to come on and have something to say or a question to ask, and if we've put you in jail, please let us know in the chat so that we can get you back out again. Brandy disappeared on me, but I was going to ask her to talk about next week really quick. We're having folks come on to talk about AutoCrit. And I am not real familiar with it. So Brandy, if you're able to come back on, we'll let you do that in a second. Wanted to say thank you, of course, to Isabel or to Louisa.
Yeah.
Grateful for, oh my gosh, just, this is one that I'm going to want to go back, I think, and listen to again and again. And just your story and how you've used so many different avenues. I think that's great. A whole range of writing experiences, and it's just wonderful how God has used you in so many different ways that way. Just to clarify, for those of you who may not know, Isabel mentioned the Mosaic Collection. So just very, very quickly, that is a group of, for those who don't know, of indie authors who come together, and we write under the banner, and then we support each other with marketing. So I think there's about 11 or 12 of us now. Most of us in the United States, a few in Canada, and we have one in England. So it's an international group, which is really fun. And we release at least 2 anthologies a year, and then various novels as the writers get them written. So you can also look those up on Amazon. So thanks for that shout out. Brandy, you're back. Can you talk about AutoCrit?
Yeah, sorry about that. I had an important phone call. The son come in, and I just had to take it. Next week we have AutoCrit that will be joining us. They have a fantastic piece of software that really helps writers to not only check their editing, but also they've made it so that you can just create in the software. And I think they're going to come and demonstrate the platform. But it's also a fantastic community. So it's really, really great. I'm really excited that they're going to come and share with us everything about Autocrit and how it can help writers. I have to say, J.D. Barker uses Autocrit for his novels, and he says he's gotten to be a better writer because of it. So if you can make it next week, please come, because it's a fantastic piece of software, fantastic people, and I highly recommend it.
All right. Well, again, I want to thank Louisa for being here and sharing her books and her journey. If you're watching the replay, we do invite you to join us any Tuesday morning, 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central, and then go around the globe to find your time from there. You can also join our Writers Chat Facebook group, or check out our Writers Chat Facebook page, where you can find all of our videos. They're also, of course, on YouTube on the Serious Writer channel. So that's it for this time. I'm going to stop the recording, but if you're here, please stay for the after party, and we'll see y'all again next week on Writers Chat. Bye-bye.